Hi everyone, I'm Silent K and welcome to the CineFile. It's your inside look at movies, the trivia and special moments that surround them, and more film facts than you even knew you needed. This vid is kind of busting at the seams, so you may have to watch it more than once to catch it all. Before we start, don't forget to subscribe and ring that bell to get notified every time I post a new vid. I even got you a sound effect a la Rocky 3.
Ding, ding.
Today we are peeking through the weed smoke at The King of Staten Island starring Pete Davidson. Time for some random fun. The King of Staten Island is a movie about a man in his mid-20s, like Pete Davidson, who loses his firefighter dad in a fire, also like Pete Davidson, and how, unlike his sister, he's not really living up to his potential. No, this isn't a biopic, but that is Pete Davidson too, until he landed the gig on Saturday Night Live. Both Pete and director Judd Apatow decided to make this a family affair. Maude Apatow is Judd's daughter and plays Pete's sister in the movie. Pete had his grandpa on set.
His name's Steven Davidson, and he's a fucking animal on set.
And so Steven Davidson was the guy that got you interested in movies.
Yes. His father owned a movie theater, so he just grew up watching every single movie ever, and he had to babysit all the time, so he just made me watch every single movie ever, but they were like his. So I know like Ernest Borgnine.
Some of you may not know this, but when Pete was 7 years old, his firefighter father died in the terrorist attacks in New York City on 9/11. His name was Scott, and as what's a pretty obvious homage, that's Pete's character's name in this film. Actually, his full name is Scott Carlin in the movie, and while I haven't verified this, I'm going to take a stab in the dark and say that's for two reasons, as an homage to the late great stand-up George Carlin. Reason number one, Pete's a stand-up comic himself. You may have seen his first special, Alive from New York, which got some tepid reviews, but there's a lot of potential there. Reason number two, Judd Apatow is working on a George Carlin documentary right now. Another random thing to keep an eye out for is longtime SNL writer and creator of Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, Robert Smigel, makes an appearance in the movie. But maybe my favorite piece of trivia about this movie actually came out of the promotion of it. Judd and Pete got together to do kind of like a Zoom call to promote the movie, and Pete said this.
I'm trying to be healthy, eat right and all healthy foods, and I quit drugs for a bit.
You did?
Yeah, man.
Quit drugs?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be positive.
Sure enough, 3 hours later, there's a knock at the door. At the house Pete still shares with his mom, by the way, but I'll talk more about that later. And someone just gives him a duffel bag of weed.
How much drugs did they send you?
It was like a couple weeks worth, for sure.
And did you take them?
No, I gave them to my friend, Jay.
Oh, good. How's Jay doing?
I haven't heard from him since. It's been about 4 days.
To paraphrase Mel Brooks, sometimes it's good to be the king of Staten Island. I had to do it. You know I had to do it. That joke had to be done in this video. I couldn't help myself. I don't think I can offer a better piece of random trivia than that, so let's see who's in this thing. Roll out the roster. Longtime Pete Davidson buddy and rapper Machine Gun Kelly makes an appearance as a tattoo shop owner. Stand-up comic Ricky Velez is in there. You may remember him from Master of None. Then there's Lou Wilson.
Your work is mad inconsistent. Obama ain't right.
I got the eyes wrong, okay?
He's not right.
Moises Arias.
I love your tattoos. My brother, it's a spitting image.
Then there's Pamela Adlon, who's a character actor you may not immediately recognize. I know for me, every time I see her, I think of Californication and Louis. I always thought that casting for Louis was kind of weird because Pamela and Louis C.K. actually played a married couple 4 years prior on a different series called Lucky Louie, which was just not as successful. When you see her on screen, you probably won't be able to tell, but she's also the voice of Bobby Hill on King of the Hill, and she's won an Emmy for it. Bill Burr plays Pete's mom's love interest, which is some weird kind of tongue twister, and also a firefighter. Just him explaining what it was like to read the script for the first time shows you why he's a good stand-up.
When I first read it through, not the smartest guy here, so I was just reading it linear. I'm like, this guy's a fucking asshole. I'm like, is this what Judd thinks of me, that he wants me to play this guy? Did my wife write this script?
Next up is Steve Buscemi, who at this point is practically a household name. His comedic run with Adam Sandler movies started with Billy Madison, then went to The Wedding Singer, then Big Daddy, Mr. Deeds, I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry, Grown Ups, Grown Ups 2, The Cobbler, and Ridiculous 6. But don't count him out of dramatic roles either. He stands up in Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Fargo, and The Big Lebowski. Could easily make the case that he's one of the greatest character actors of all time, no contest. How can you not love Steve Buscemi? Before making it as an actor, he spent 4 years in the 80s as a New York City firefighter. Then, on September 12, 2001, the day after Pete Davidson's dad died, he returned to his old firehouse and worked 12-hour shifts searching through the rubble of the World Trade Center for survivors. What makes me love him even more is that so many people don't know that story because he never told anybody. Belle Powley plays Pete's love interest, and you may recognize her from her most notable recent role as a producer in Love with the Weatherman on The Morning Show. She's got a native English accent, but worked hard on the Staten Island one.
So you would say like talk, and I, in English accent, say talk, and New York and Staten Island you'd say talk. So it's actually like, that for me is like quite good. And it's also about like softening like the D's and the T's. So if you were saying don't talk to me like that, I say like don't, like very pointed. You'd be like don't, like it sounds like kind of like a J or something, like don't talk to me like that. It's like very splashy. And then also if you just like add a lot of like like attitude, then it kind of just like comes naturally.
You got those accents on lockdown, girl. Yeah, I should never do that. As I mentioned earlier, Maud Apatow plays Pete's sister, and Pete says she nailed their dynamic right away.
Okay, like, but what are you gonna do? Are you gonna get a job, or are you gonna leave the house?
I don't know. I'm gonna open that tattoo restaurant.
No, like, for real.
In fact, Maud is still close friends with Pete's real-life sister now. Thanks to her director father, it's like we've been watching her grow up on films like Knocked Up, Funny People, and This Is 40. She was also on the HBO show Girls briefly, and had a handful of eps on that new Netflix series, Hollywood. Marissa Tomei plays Pete's mom, and she's kind of been catapulted back into the limelight lately thanks to the Marvel Universe. She's been keeping an eye on Spider-Man as the newest rendition of Aunt May in multiple movies, and let's not forget about her critically acclaimed roles in films like The Wrestler and In the Bedroom. She's no stranger to Apatow films either. Do you even remember her in Trainwreck? She was in those awkward movie scenes with the dog-walking Daniel Radcliffe, aka Harry Potter. I know those scenes were weird, but that was kind of the point. She's also the 16th actress to win an Oscar for a comedic role, a la My Cousin Vinny. Don't worry, I'm not going to try the accent this time. I'll let her do it.
We agreed to get married as soon as you won your first case. Meanwhile, 10 years later, my niece, the daughter of my sister, is getting married. My biological clock is ticking like this, and the way this case is going, I ain't never getting married.
That brings us to the king himself, Pete Davidson. Despite being one of the highlights on SNL, he has had a pretty rough life before breaking into showbiz. No, I'm not talking about Ariana Grande. Fine, for those of you completely under a rock, they dated, got engaged, broke up, and she got a hit song out of it. Thank you. Next. And he actually revels in the fact that she put out a song called Pete Davidson. He's also said in multiple interviews that he laughs every time a guy walks up to him and says, "Hey man, you gave me hope because I didn't know an ugly guy could get such a hottie." As I said before, his dad died on 9/11, which he weaves into his comedy constantly.
Knock, knock. Who's there? Not your dad.
He has tried to erase the stigma surrounding borderline personality disorder and Crohn's disease, both of which he lives with. He started doing stand-up at 16 at a bowling alley in Staten Island, basically on a dare. But the story of how he landed on Saturday Night Live is epic. If this is the only tidbit you take from this CineFile, it was worth it, trust. When Judd Apatow directed Trainwreck, he asked leading lady Amy Schumer who was a funny up-and-comer. Schumer insisted 20-year-old Pete was the funniest person out there, so they put him in the movie and gave him just one line.
What's your story? Are you like a Division I athlete or something?
No, me? No. I was on the Xbox that I was playing, and then I got really high and tripped on my bong.
Are you high?
Yeah.
Apatow full-on admits he was trying to give the audience a Richard Dreyfuss in The Graduate kind of moment.
But it's okay now.
Shall I get the cops? What? I'll get the cops.
Hey, wait a minute.
So as you saw, SNL alum Bill Hader shared that scene with Schumer and Pete, and he called Davidson a few days later and said, "Oh hey, I told Lorne Michaels about you." One of the reasons I'm such a big Pete Davidson fan is he admits his response was, "Why? Like, why would you do that?" Also, can you imagine getting a call like that out of the blue? It's not like he was on set vying for a shot at SNL. In fact, he later admitted he didn't even know the show was still on the air. Pete also famously lives in his mom's basement.
Watch this.
Mom! Grilled cheese!
You think it's funny, but in 10 minutes, I'm gonna have a grilled cheese up there.
Which is slightly understandable when you realize how young he was when he landed the SNL gig. The youngest ever cast member is Anthony Michael Hall, who was just 17 when he got the coveted comedy spot. You didn't even remember he was on SNL, did you? Eddie Murphy started his 4-year stint with the show at just 19, while Robert Downey Jr., you heard me, Iron Man himself, beat Pete by 90 days, getting cast at 20 years and 7 months old. Anthony Michael Hall and Robert Downey Jr. were both on season 11 of SNL, which had huge names that only made it one season. Besides those two youngins, Joan Cusack, Randy Quaid, and Damon Wayans all got the boot at the end of the year. This left Wayans free to do In Living Color a few years later, so don't be mad at it, that's how we got Homie the Clown. Having Judd Apatow directing and producing this movie adds some serious clout, and here's why. Starting with the producing scroll, his resume tracks like a must-see of comedy evolution. You're seeing most of them, but I'll name a few too. Cable Guy, Anchorman, Talladega Nights. That's a second Will Ferrell movie, and you're gonna notice he likes working with some of the same people over and over again. Superbad, Forgetting Sarah Marshall. See what I mean? Jonah Hill was in both of those. Step Brothers, Will Ferrell's back. Pineapple Express. Oh, he loves Seth Rogen too. Get Him to the Greek. Oh look, Jonah Hill again. Bridesmaids and The Big Sick. As for directing, he started on The Larry Sanders Show and Freaks and Geeks, which are both beloved. Then his feature film directorial debut was The 40-Year-Old Virgin. That's some M. Night Shyamalan level street cred. He followed that with Knocked Up. Do you remember when people watched Katherine Heigl movies? Like, there was actually a demand for it. Then came Funny People, which unfortunately wasn't that funny, even in the parts where it was supposed to be. Then This Is 40. Why is he obsessed with being 40 years old? And then the aforementioned Trainwreck. Remember a little bit ago when I said he loves working with Seth Rogen? Well, he was in 4 out of 5 of those movies. I know The King of Staten Island is coming out on demand due to the pandemic, but let's look at some of the numbers from Apatow's directed films. I'm going to include Box Office Poll here because it's a pretty good barometer of how well a movie was received. We'll start with The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 85, an IMDb rating of 7.1, and pulled in more than 4 times its budget at the box office. Knocked Up got a 90 on Rotten Tomatoes, a 6.9 rating on IMDb, and pulled in nearly 5 times its production budget. Then we see a lull with Funny People, which got a Rotten Tomatoes score of 69, an IMDb rating of 6.3, and brought in less money at the box office than it cost to make the film. Low ratings didn't seem to hurt This Is 40, which saw a Rotten Tomatoes score of 52, an IMDb rating of 6.2, but still almost doubled its production budget. Then we've got Trainwreck, which got a really high Rotten Tomatoes score of 84 compared to its IMDb rating of 6.2. It had the same production budget as This Is 40, but brought in more than 3 times that at the box office. So why does all this matter? Because arguably the movies you would think have done well for Apatow did. And since The King of Staten Island has an early Rotten Tomatoes score of 79, even with no IMDb rating yet, it seems to have some significant money-making potential. It also can't be ignored that a huge draw for this movie is Davidson's rollover appeal from SNL. So let's deep dive into some stats of how SNL cast members fare when they step away from the show to put something out on the big screen. Adam Sandler had already been in Coneheads, Airheads, and Billy Madison thanks to his SNL run, but his first movie after the TV gig was Happy Gilmore. While it wasn't a huge hit with a 61 Rotten Tomatoes score and barely breaking $40 million at the box office worldwide, it showed what he was capable of, leading him to now be worth more than $400 million. And he's had some terrible movies in there. Pixels. And I don't have time to name them all. Jack and Jill. But Ridiculous 6 has to be one of the worst. It's got a 0 rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Think about how bad a movie has to be that 35 people reviewed it and all gave it a goose egg. We also have to talk about these grown-ups movies. This shows the pure genius of the Sandman. The movies are not good, but somehow people love them. Grown Ups has a Rotten Tomatoes score of 10, and the sequel has a 7. Yet together, they still took in $290 million. There are rumors of a 3rd installment based on a script that's circulating somewhere around Hollywood, which to me is a no-brainer. Obviously, they make money. Put anybody in it and it'll just pour in. Maybe not Katherine Heigl. Stay away from her. Tina Fey took her SNL head writer talents to the silver screen with Mean Girls. While she only had a small acting role in the film, her screenplay made the movie an instant hit. It is so fetch. It got an 84 Rotten Tomatoes score, brought in $86 million at the box office, all while Fey still kept her day job. This meant no one was surprised when she wrote and starred in 30 Rock shortly after leaving the SNL stage. And Mean Girls never stopped giving to Fey. It's on Broadway now, and there's a national tour. Bill Murray was a workaholic on SNL, but as soon as he left, his film career jumped off. His first role was in Caddyshack, which starred another SNL alum, Chevy Chase. It got a 74 Rotten Tomatoes score, and then in 1981, the very next year, he had the lead in Stripes, which got an 86 on Rotten Tomatoes. Wait, have you not seen this movie? Okay, you are allowed at this moment to press pause on this video and go watch it. That's how good it is. Ivan Reitman directs Murray, Harold Ramis, John Larroquette, Judge Reinhold, and John Candy to some campy comedy gold. Murray's career absolutely skyrocketed after that, with 20 movies landing an 80 or better on Rotten Tomatoes. To me, this is all kind of incredible when you consider he doesn't have an agent at all. He is also among the handful of SNL cast members to get nominated for an acting Oscar. His nod for Lost in Translation put him in the elite club with Robert Downey Jr., who's been nominated twice, but somehow not for Iron Man and Endgame, which is a tragedy. Scorsese be damned. Joan Cusack, who was also nominated twice, Randy Quaid, Dan Aykroyd. How on earth did he get a nomination for the same movie Morgan Freeman did, who was obviously so much better? This is why people don't understand the Academy. And a few years after Murray got his nomination, Eddie Murphy got his for Dreamgirls. Speaking of Eddie, I see him as the closest thing we can compare Pete to. Slow your roll, I don't mean overall talent-wise, just bear with me. They both began stand-up at a young age, they both appeared on SNL with other cast members at times, but are more beloved for their individual moments. Mr. Robinson's Neighborhood is crazy close to Pete's time on the Weekend Update desk if you really think about it. Both comics looking straight at the camera, addressing real issues of the time. They both use music to their advantage on the show, Pete with his music videos shorts, and Eddie with his classic stylings of buckwheat. Wookin' pun up. Also, as 50% of the top 4 youngest SNL cast members ever, they lasted on the show the longest, both feeling like they didn't belong. Pete has even said he's surprised whenever Lorne Michaels asks him back, and he feels more like the butt of the joke these days than anything else. He's not even sure how much longer he's gonna stay. While on SNL, Eddie did 3 movies that immediately showed off his star power: 48 Hours, Trading Places with SNL alum Dan Aykroyd, and Beverly Hills Cop. Those brought scores on Rotten Tomatoes of 93, 87, and 82 respectively. Pete's 79 for the King of Staten Island is not far off those numbers, and with Apatow at the helm, this could legit be a breakout moment for Pete Davidson, which in my opinion is long overdue. So that's your CineFile on the movie The King of Staten Island. You are now more movie-minded before you see it. I'm Silent K saying be kind, rewind.
Hey guys, have fun out there, all right? That's what we do, we make movies.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the CineFile. While you're here, why don't you subscribe, like the video, and ring that bell. And don't be shy with the comments. No, you have to like the video. You can't just swipe right on me. But thanks.